I dare say you've seen this shield, or scutum, because it's a Roman shield, on social media doing the rounds, and that's because it's been part of the Legion exhibition at the British Museum, which I visited and really enjoyed. And what I want to do is talk about it, a bit about the basics, its design, what it was possibly used for, and some wild speculation as to why there's something missing and why that might be. Let's start with the basics. So this was, as I said, a Roman scutum. It's dated to around the middle of the 3rd century AD, and it was found in what is now modern southeast Syria. And it wasn't found as you can see it now. It was actually flattened and in several pieces, and there's obviously been some incredible work to put it back together, because I saw this up close and it was seamless. It's an absolutely beautiful piece, so well done on all the work there. And the reason it survived was because it was squashed. It was in a tower, in the basement of a tower, and it was also in very dry, arid conditions, which is brilliant for this kind of material, because had this been, lots of rain, water, that kind of a thing, all of this would have just perished. Next up then, the design and some of the features that you can see on the shield. At the base of the shield you can see this lion, and again this is beautifully done. Coming up close to the shield was really a high point for me so far in 2024, and I don't know that it will be easily overtaken. And it's not just the lion, which looks pretty awesome. You can also make out some detail above, and yeah, it's just fantastic. There's been a lot of work that's gone on to this, and high quality work at that. At the top of the shield we've got an eagle, which, let's face it, isn't much of a surprise because this is Rome after all. But on either side of the eagle we have winged victories. Now, winged victories are quite common. We find them a lot in Greek art as well. The general premise, or the idea behind them, is that you have winged victory because victory can travel anywhere. And here it is, giving the eagle some sort of celebration. It looks like it's giving it a wreath or something like that. Again, this is quite a strong message here. This is about Rome being dominant. You've also got that lion at the bottom. So this shield was certainly giving out messages. And in terms of how this was painted, well, it's not necessarily oil-based paints. I'm not sure that these existed at the time. It's more likely that this was cassine paints, that kind of a thing. But you can see how good and how strong those colours were. And again, we sometimes forget that with antiquity. We often think of things being very much, lots of white marble. We forget that colour was a real prominent thing. And certainly again here, it helps sell the message that I think the shield is trying to give. And all of this brings me to a possible use of the shield, certainly a context in which we can see it being used, and that was as a parade shield. Now, many years ago I was doing some reenactment, and the group that I was doing it with had a copy of this shield, and I asked about it because I'd not seen one like it before, and they said it was a parade shield. Because just look at it, it's the kind of message shield, it sells propaganda, it tells you about how strong Rome is, and it looks just, well, fancy. So it makes sense that it perhaps would have been something that you'd use as part of a military parade. And that itself brings me to what's missing there, right in the middle. If you're used to Roman scutum, Roman shields, you'd know that what normally sits in the middle is the boss. This is a metal bowl. And the reason for it, and I've done this in previous videos, is that it helps protect the hand, because the way that the shield is held and the balance of the shield means that you need a bar handle. You can't have a handle that sticks out from the shield, because that would make it, you just couldn't hold it that way. And of course, if you have a handle that's part of the shield and part of the balance of the shield, you need to have it covered, hence the boss. But the boss isn't there. So why isn't it there? Well, there could be a number of reasons. We know, for example, that Romans were very efficient at using armour and replacing bits with bits, so possibly it was taken off because it was being used for a shield that was actually being used in, well, military life day to day, as it were. Now, there is another possibility, and this is really speculating on speculation, but I think it's worth a go, so at least hear me out. To understand it, we need to think about Greek hoplite shields, and again, I've done some videos on these. And the way that Greek hoplite shields were held is that you put your arm through a cuff, and that helped you hold the shield. Now, we know that in some instances, or rather there's some source references to these being removed from shields, particularly when they were placed in public spaces or temples or places like that. And the idea being that no one could then use them. So, for example, if there was a civil uprising or revolt or just some trouble going down, people couldn't immediately go and grab some shields and therefore defend themselves. It effectively deactivated the shield. And I wonder if that's going on here a bit. Because after all, these were in a fort, these were in a storeroom. They would have been in a location known to people. And perhaps if people were thinking of using them in an uprising or similar, they would have found that these were simply no use at all, because you're not going to use that shield. There's no way you want to put your hand and have your hand exposed whilst holding that shield. So perhaps it was some sort of a safety measure, again with the speculative cap on. Assuming you're still with me, thank you very much. Let me know what you think, by the way. Stick them in the comments. And if you've got any questions, put them down there as well. And if you like this kind of thing, well, why not click follow?